Michael Conforto, New York Mets. Photo by Jim McIsaac, Getty Images. It's late February, the time of year when there is optimism in the hearts of every New York Mets fan. The season is yet to start and anything is possible. This year it just might be. The National League Eastern Division seems to be up for grabs, and 4 of the 5 teams have a shot at winning it. The Mets enter 2019 with a renewed sense of hope. There is a new man running the show from the front office, general manager Brodie V. He's brought in some new players who will be able to give the team a boost in the standings. We asked our roundtable panel if they thought the Mets have enough talent to realistically contend for the NL East title. David Hill, site expert, called to the pen. There is no question that the New York Mets have improved their roster this offseason. Brodie V did exactly what he had promised, upgrading the roster and working to make the Mets a contender. The additions of Edwin Diaz, Robinson Cano, and Jed Lowry, along with bringing back Familia, are major upgrades in areas that were needed. But is that enough to contend in what should be a difficult NL East? The Nationals still appear to be the class of the division, and the Phillies' offseason is still incomplete pending the end results of their pursuit of Bryce Harper. The Braves should be better, but that may not reflect in the standings. Right now, I feel that the Mets can contend for a wild card. However, that depends on whether or not the starting pitching can stay healthy, and if the upgrades on paper prove out on the diamond. Next, Ed Stein, dominant pitching staff. Page 2. Jacob deGrom, New York Mets. Photo by Elsa, Getty Images. Manager Mickey Callaway has a deep set of tools to work with. I'm feeling good about the New York Mets' chances this year. As long as they stay relatively healthy, there are several reasons why I believe they have enough talent to win the division. Starting pitching. There are the makings of a dominant starting staff this year. Of course, Mets fans have heard that for years, but the team is due for a healthy year from the starters. From 1 through almost 5, NYM's starting pitchers are potentially as good as any other team. The staff is anchored by last year's Cy Young Award winner Jacob deGrom. He was 10-9, with 269 strikeouts and a microscopic 1.70 ERA in 217 innings pitched. Imagine what his record could have been if he had gotten just a bit more run support. Behind JDG in the rotation is Noah Syndergaard, who had an off year, pitching only 154.1 innings. He still posted a 13-4 record and 3.03 ERA. More from Empire rights back Zach Wheeler finally shook off the injury bug and proved he could be counted on to take a regular turn in the rotation. He'll be the 3rd starter. Steven Matz has all the tools and should he finally put it all together, will be a superb number 4. Right now veteran lefty Jason Vargas is penciled into the 5th slot. He'll have plenty of competition, but if healthy has shown flashes of excellence over his career. Relief pitching. In my opinion, the bullpen could be the New York Mets' big strength in 2019. Van Wagenen traded for Mariners closer Edwin Diaz in the offseason from Seattle. I covered the Mariners last season and I can tell you that I have rarely seen as dominant of a closer in any season. He saved 57 games for a team that won just 77. Diaz struck out 124 batters in 73.1 innings and had a stingy 0.74 whip. Diaz will be set up by a familiar face to the Mets faithful, Juris Familia. Aside from an injury-plagued 2017, he had been the team's closer 2015 until his trade to Oakland last July. Familia doesn't need to be the lights-out closer he once was. All he has to do most outings is to protect the lead for Diaz. Another pair of power arms are set to begin the season in setup roles, Seth Lugo and Robert Gesellman. Either one could find themselves in the rotation should an injury occur, but for now team with Diaz and Familia to make a dominating relief staff. The above 4 relievers are all right-handed. That leaves a half-dozen lefties vying for 1 or 2 jobs. Free agent signee, Justin Wilson has the inside track to be the primary lefty. The 7-year veteran has 407 Ks and 370.2 career innings pitched. When the Mets make the postseason, this is the kind of bullpen that gives opponents fits. Balanced Line UP wrote an article earlier this week as to why the Mets should play small ball this season. The Cliff Notes version is that they have a talented group of hitters throughout the batting order. That is opposed to the lineup of free swingers they had all last season. Look for longer innings at the plate and production coming from almost every spot in the batting order. The New York Mets can lead the league in extra base hits in 2019 and not be in the top 10 of home runs. Additionally, should a lineup regular go down, Ben Wagenen has brought in a deep roster of competent players. Their biggest obstacles are Atlanta, who is very young, and maybe Philadelphia, if they sign Bryce Harper, but the talent gap has closed this season. Next, John Carroll Jr. competition not much better in 2019. Page 3. Noah Syndergaard, Seth Lugo, Jacob deGrom, New York Mets. Photo by Mike Stobe, Getty Images. To answer the question bluntly, yes, the Mets do have enough talent to compete in the NL East, but it will never be that simple. What helps the Mets more than anything is the fact that despite how it looks with their division rivals, did they really get that much better? Philadelphia Phillies will perhaps look the most changed in the division with additions such as JT Realmuto, Gene Segura, and Andrew McCutchen. If they are going to legit contend for the division, they will have to have a formula similar to the world champion Red Sox and score all the runs to get there, which is easier said than done. Their rotation doesn't touch the Mets, though. Aaron Nola is great, but their rotation is relatively weak. Nola would probably be the third starter if he was on the Mets, and he is the Phil's ace. Atlanta Braves have a great core but his small sample size. They were humbly knocked out the playoffs by the Dodgers last year and showed they were nowhere close to being ready for a real playoff push. Josh Donaldson could be the player that gets them over the hump, but that is not a given. Again, their rotation doesn't touch the Mets. The Mets staff is established and proven to be legit. The Braves might have a better lineup on paper, but with additions like Robinson Cano and Jed Lowry, the Mets added guys who just simply get on base. That closes the gap with the Braves, who could fall off. Washington also feel like the Nationals had a much to gloat about off-season, but still not quite there. If they do lose Harper, where are they? Patrick Corbin does not scare me that much. Even worse Mets teams than the current squad now have been better than the Nats in the Max Scherzer era. A Juan Soto breakout campaign aside, I do not see how the Nats got much better than the Mets. Once again with them, pitching is the name of the game. If the Mets fire on all cylinders, their rotation is deeper than that which resides in the nation's capital. Miami won't even talk about the Marlins. They are almost half the 2017 Mets with Curtis Granderson and Neil Walker now at the helm. The Marlins traded away yet another MVP-caliber player this offseason in Realmuto, and Derek Jeter's days of once again haunting the Mets are well ahead of him, not anytime soon. New York Mets. So overall, the Mets might have made the most moves, even if they were not as overwhelming as getting Corbin or Donaldson. With a now improved bullpen and still the best rotation in the division, I don't see how, if all things on paper go according to plan, the Mets do not compete for the division. They are not the team to beat, that would the reigning division champion Braves. But to look at all the substance from the offseason, it is tough to look at the Mets and not think they improved the most from their 2018 roster to now. Did they improve enough is the real question. Everyone did get slightly better. It's just answering if the Mets closed the gap enough. With the deepest rotation and most improved bullpen, it seems as if they have. Of course, because they are the New York Mets, this is all stock. There will obviously be inevitable injuries and long slumps from the sluggers, but maybe the depth is solid enough to overcome it all. After all, depth and versatility are what Brodie Van Wagenen seems to like the most in his roster. This is why they play the games. Next, Tim Boyle, best on paper page 4. Use your arrows to browse Robinson Cano, New York Mets. Photo by Michael Reeves, Getty Images. The New York Mets have plenty of talent to contend in the National League East this year. They were 11-8 against the Philadelphia Phillies and Washington Nationals last season with an inferior team. Now stocked with better talent, I expect them to do well against the Atlanta Braves, too. Win the National League East is a different story, and I believe a lot of it will come down to health. I don't think the Mets are the best team on paper, but I have the same feeling about the 2015 team. The Braves are relying heavily on a few young kids and don't have a great pitching staff. The Phillies have a lot of new faces and I have to question their chemistry. As for the Nationals, they're a ball club that tends to always underachieve. The Mets managed to upgrade at nearly every position from last year's opening day lineup. Even without Yoenis Cespedes, I expect them to be much better with Robinson Cano, Jed Lowry, and Wilson Ramos increasing the team's overall ability to get on base. Along with the usual cast of talented pitchers, the improved lineup should make for a nice run in 2019. Next, Cano is ready to go. Empire writes back will publish a weekly roundtable on Thursdays. The sports will vary from week to week. Look for more expert analysis in the weeks ahead. Use your arrows to browse.